Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 40. A little week off. Everyone has a week they needed to take off, and we tactically chose a week which involved some awful fights. I think the only fight we previewed was Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis, and about an hour after that went out, I think it was Curtis Blades got COVID positive, so that fight was taken from the card, and basically any sort of slither of hope or sort of intrigue I had in that card went. So we took a week off and we come back with an okay card. I think there's a few things to talk about from the Hermansson Vettori card, but also a sort of an underrated UFC 256, which maybe hasn't got the headliner, but has certainly got a solid main card to close the year out.
Yeah, it was. We really were kind of bookended by just bad cards either side, so it was like a bit of a rest has never hurt anyone. But no, I think 256 is it looks very good, to be honest. I'm very excited for it. It should be the like 5-fight main card is like really consistently very good. Like every fight contains like kind of top ranked contenders or prospects, and most of them are kind of action fighters. Like, you're not going to get a bad fight out of, like, Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira, just, like, saying those two names next to each other. They're both, like, incredible action fighters. Like, they literally cannot produce a bad fight. I don't see it being possible. And then, like, the same goes for the rest of the fights on the main card, to be honest. So, somewhat maybe lacking in kind of star power, but from the quality of the fights, I would guess they should be fantastic, to be honest.
Yeah, well, me and Jack will get into that in a little bit. We'll start with Hermansson versus Vettori, that card, and we'll move on a bit later to that. So Hermansson Vettori, do you want to start with that main event, and we can sort of pick out a few things afterwards?
Yeah. So basically, it was just it was a fairly uneventful fight from what I kind of remember. I'm say what I remember because I don't remember much of it because it was fairly uneventful. The only thing I really recall is that Jack Hermansson looked like he'd never seen a straight left in his life. And that information is quite sad for Darren Till, who, based on that, probably would have killed Jack Hermansson had they actually come together. So that's a bit unfortunate for Darren Till, missing out on that fight, which looked to be fairly stylistically favourable. Although maybe Hermansson probably could have got the wrestling going a bit more against Till than I imagine he could against Vettori. But yeah, overall, just a fairly solid kind of workman performance from Vettori. Did what he needed to do. Just kind of leaned on his basics, which is what he mostly is.
Yeah, I mean, he came in. I think solid performance. I think coming in on 1 week notice. I think essentially it was probably about 1 week notice. I think that deserves credit. And it's certainly a really good win from. I think Hermansson was ranked 4th in the light heavyweight rankings. So, or sorry, the middleweight rankings. So that should certainly get him into the top. How do you think 6 maybe? I wonder whether they've updated it, but
yeah,
we've got.
I think there was some controversy because Darren Till got moved up the rankings.
Amazing.
Despite not fighting.
But yeah, it was a good fight. As you mentioned, that left hand, essentially just straight ahead. I think I looked at the stats after. I think it was 90% of the shots Vettori threw, or something like that, were at the head. And it's like, I don't blame Vettori because, as you said, it was working all night. But surely from Hermansson, either there had to be some sort of adaptation between opponent changes as to figure out like Vettori's main weapon is that straight left, or in the fight there had to be something from the corner to say, duck under it. He's just throwing that straight right, that straight left, try and slip it. It's like it was just his face was just there all night, and that sort of.
It wouldn't have even have to be a stylistic change though between opponents because like Darren Till is mostly a straight left as well. So
yeah, that is true.
Like
that is true.
Really, you can't even blame that. So he just hadn't ever, it seemed, figured out how to box with a southpaw. And then late on, it seemed that like he hadn't figured out how to box with a southpaw, and then he kind of never considered whether or not he should box with the southpaw, and just kept trying to do his best, but
Yeah, it
never
was
really
weird.
looked
We
to
weren't.
significantly
We
change it
didn't
up.
see. We didn't see the. I mean, he is a very weird fighter. Sort of like very sort of herky jerky movements. But I thought the leg kick wasn't there a lot. I thought he'd go to the leg kick a lot more. And just like I think Hermansson's the kind of guy that is his striking is only really effective when it's mixed in with the threat of a takedown or mixed in with him moving forward, using that clinch. Sort of the cliche of like Frankie Edgar in his late featherweight run. It's like if he can't get the takedown, he's in trouble. Sort what we saw against him in Korean Zombie before he moved down. It's like if Hermansson can't get that sort of hybrid wrestling clinch game going, then his striking becomes very predictable and sort of very easy to nullify.
Yeah, he is a very kind of limited striker in that sense, and does lean heavily on the takedown and the kind of in and out movement, leaping in, kind of playing off each other, and it just didn't. But yeah, good win for Vettori. Got him up. It moved him up 8 places.
Yeah,
in the
a
rankings,
great.
Very good for him.
Where's he now? In what, 6th, 7th?
He's 5th.
5th. Wow.
5th. Hermansson down in 6th. Hill got moved up 2 places to 4.
Amazing. I mean, perhaps the Vettori Till fight is one to make. I can't see. Maybe Till Cannonier. Maybe.
Yeah, I think both of those would be quite interesting.
Costa, of course, is hanging around. Although, to be honest, a lot of this hinges on what on earth's going on with Adesanya. I don't think we've had any concrete confirmation either way as to whether
it's just there is nothing interesting particularly for him. It's the main issue. Not his fault, but it's a bit what are you going to do?
Yeah, but a solid, a decent enough fight, and good to see Vettori get a win on short notice. Elsewhere on the card, I mean, there were a lot of postponements, a lot of late sort of pullouts from these fights, like COVID or weight cutting wise. One fighter you mentioned before we went on was Ilia Topuria, who was on the prelims and got a first round knockout against Damon Jackson. I remember the name when I saw it on the card because he was one of a sort of a famed group of fighters who joined my Aka Ruiners. I remember I tipped. I think I tipped Yusuf Zalal to beat him because he came in as a late replacement, and I was like, right, this is a Zalal win here. He came in, he ruined that week's Aka, but I think, to be honest, after that performance, I might be sticking sort of with him in future Akas because that was a very impressive performance.
Yeah, it's certainly what he just looks quite developed for a 23-year-old. He counters well, mixes up his combos quite well, and between levels, body and head, hits pretty hard. He's got fairly decent defense, like he moves his head at least well enough, good enough for MMA at least. And yeah, he just seems to be a fairly good prospect, to be honest. I like the look of him. So
yeah,
I'll
another one in
following his career and his fights going forward. Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant division, isn't it? So,
yeah.
And it will still take him a while to get into the rankings, I imagine. With it being such a good division. Yeah. So we'll get to see a lot of him before he gets to a title shot, I imagine, if he does get to a title shot, that is. Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, what else on this card sort of took your fancy? I mentioned, as before we went on, Smolka Quinones, nothing in terms of huge ramifications, but Smolka's a fun fighter, and that certainly was a fun fight for all of the sort of 2.5 rounds
it really was.
that it went on. We had Jordan Levitt with a 22-second slam against poor old Matt Weinman, sort of like picked him up. His corner yelled, "Bring him over here." He sort of like trudged over with Matt Weinman towards his corner and just sort of slammed him down, and that was that.
And it was quite a nice slam. Like a lot of slams you see are kind of accidental or maybe not so accidental headbutts that result in the knockout.
Yeah.
But here he really like framed off well with the forearm before he slammed him down. So it was actually a nice clean slam knockout. So that was fun. And then also Mowgli Benitez versus Justin James. Mowgli looked fantastic. Kicks so hard, it's ridiculous. Tore up his body and his legs with the kicks, and the uppercut was giving James trouble as well for as long as the fight lasted, which was a good adaptation. Like mid-fight, he started working in the uppercut, and then the intercepting knee as well was brilliant to end it. But yeah, really good performance from Benitez, and actually like a fairly okay-ish card, like kind of more low star power kind of fighters putting in fun performances. So yeah, it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the only one we didn't mention, which I'll briefly mention, is the co-main. Jamal Hill defeating OSP. I mean, I think the any sort of win over OSP at this stage in his career has got to be sort of taken for what it is. And it's a good win and certainly a good name on Jamal Hill's resume. But this was certainly one of the slower fights on the card, and I think Jamal Hill is going to have to do quite a bit more before we can sort of see him in the. Oh God, I've just actually seen his record, and he's got a no contest for a positive marijuana test. That is annoying. Jeez, I mean,
whatever.
I mean, that is when on earth will they stop with that? But yeah, Jamal Hill, good win against OSP. OSP is essentially washed at this point. If you sort of keep any sort of vague pressure on him, he'll sort of tire after a round and a half, and that's essentially what he did. And Jamal Hill finished him off.
Yep,
that is it. But yeah, cool. No, as you were saying, a good card, solid, better than expectations. And certainly better than the Smith Devon Clark card that we decided to not cover, because that was awful. I mean, let's not beat around the bush.
No, it was not good.
Yeah, I mean that. With all that said, although actually another one. Actually, I will quickly say, Dan Vellante, another loss. Surely another step towards getting cut.
Oh surely. Yeah, and in kind of like as a segue, like to segue to Dana saying that a lot of fighters are getting cut. Jan Vellante has got to be on the list now.
I'm sorry, if Yoel Romero is getting the sack.
Yeah, unless like Jan Vellante wants to pay to fight. It's the only way I could see him staying in the UFC for any amount of time. No. So yeah, this probably will be the end of Jan Vellante. Sad for him on a personal level, but from a watching fights perspective, I'm very happy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that is very true. So yeah, condolences to Jan Vellante, but we do hope you're sacked. We'll move then, I think, to be honest, to 256, which has had so many different fights on it. At one point, it looked like it was going to be Burns Usman. Then we had the Jan Sterling and Nunes Anderson combo. There was talks of Ferguson Chandler. Now we've ended up with a flyweight title fight only 1 month after their last fight. It's all sort of been very mishmash, but we've ended up with, as we said earlier, a cracking card.
Yeah, we really have. It should be.
Want to start at the bottom and work our way out?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the bottom of the main card.
Yeah. JDS Cyril Gan, eh?
Gan, I think. Yeah, this is quite the step up for Cyril Gan. His last fight was against Tanner Bosch, and that was all the way back in December of last year. So it will be about a year since he's been out. I had not realised
it'd been that long. Very strange.
Yeah, he was supposed to fight. I'm looking at his wiki now. He's supposed to fight Shamil Abdurakhimov in April, and then he was supposed to fight Sergei Pavlovich, and those were both done for various injuries. And then I think he was supposed to fight another guy, but then there was something to do with a PFL contract. So all sorts of things, but it's worked out in the sense that in not fighting for a year, his sort of opponents have got progressively better, and he now ends up with he now ends up fighting JDS, who I don't know if he's still. Yeah, he's apparently still 7th in the ranking for heavyweight. So I mean, this is a cracking opportunity for him. He's obviously a guy that comes in with a lot of height, and as much as JDS is not the JDS of old, this is still a massive step up for him.
Yeah, it is like far and above anyone he's ever fought before. Yeah, as you said, it is kind of old JDS at this point, significantly past his best. And I don't know, I can see it seems like a bit of a default in this sense, to kind of like default to picking Garn to win based on like he's kind of got a lot of hype, and he for good reason, and with JDS being so far past his prime. But I don't know, it'd be interesting.
But the odds are crazy on this. I think Cyril Gane is like a minus 450 favourite.
That maybe I won't go that far.
It's like I think I would have favoured Gane coming into this. I think we always joke about Tanner Bosa being the sort of the guy who can move in the heavyweight division, but Cyril Gane is a guy who can move. He can switch it. He's got a heel hook on his resume. He is a guy that is talented all over, sort of in every facet of the game. This is still JDS, and it's like, I think as we said with JDS when he fought Rosenstruik, the textbook on how to beat JDS is there, but he's still very much a live dog in those sort of early couple of minutes, early rounds. And Cyril Gane's still got to be careful and still got to put on a cracking performance if he's going to put him away. Yeah,
it was like and against like Tanner Bosa, Cyril Gane didn't have like it all his own way. Like Bosa, it was not necessarily a tough fight, but like Gane had to work more than he has against like a lot of his other opponents so far. And that was like what Bosa kind of moving in and out and having a decent jab. And JDS has a good jab. And he puts combos together quite nicely. So I could like JDS, as you said, is alive in this fight. So it'll be interesting. It's just like Gane isn't necessarily like that committed a pressure fighter, but like he can kind of do it. I
mean, as
JDS likes it.
Yeah, surely if he's not, I hope that after he'd figured out he's fighting JDS, he's put as much practice into pushing forward, getting JDS to the fence, because we know that once JDS is moving back in a straight line towards that fence, then there's opportunities aplenty.
Yeah. So if he gets JDS there, which I imagine he will, he'll probably land some big shots on him, and it'll be interesting to see where Gane's at, basically.
Yeah, I think I'd favour Gane or Gane, how we're saying it, but I think minus 450 is a bit wild. And if I was sticking a pound down on sort of one fight, a JDS win could certainly be one that you could get a bit of money back, and certainly perhaps closer than what the odds makers are suggesting.
Yeah, the only kind of like JDS has been knocked out in his last 3 fights is kind of the only caveat, so to speak. So how durable he is at this point, we don't know. So it's very possible Gane can just go in there and finish him fairly quickly, because JDS can't really take it anymore.
Yeah, we'll move on to, I guess the next one on the card, Kevin Holland versus Jacare Souza. Kevin Holland was supposed to be fighting, was supposed to be the replacement for Darren Till for Hermansson, then got COVID, and now fights Jacare, who was supposed to be Marvin Vettori's opponent, who then obviously stepped up to fight Hermansson in the main event. We'd sort of been, the infamous sort of COVID run, as it's been dubbed. Kevin Holland's been fighting very frequently, but against guys that haven't really told us too much on what his level is. I think his fight against Darren Stewart showed that he's slowly working his way up. But this fight is certainly one where if he can get a win, and we can say, okay, you are a force, someone in this division who should be respected.
Yeah, it has just seemed kind of that Kevin Holland has started to take it maybe a little more seriously, kind of. Just kind of like, it seems a bit like a attitude change in part on this COVID run. But also, having said that, looking down Kevin Holland's record and like how he normally fights, he has been submitted only just over a year ago by Brendan Allen. And when you're fighting Jacare Souza, that does not bode well. So that would be kind of a big thing to take into consideration, that Kevin Holland can be a little vulnerable to submission. And he's fighting one of the best grapplers kind of, well, in the UFC, certainly in the division. So I don't know. And also, I don't really know how his game on the feet will necessarily... It doesn't seem geared to kind of keeping Jacare away from him. I feel like Jacare will have quite a lot of success pushing forward and ripping to the body. Jacare did that very well against Weidman. Even though that was a very back and forth fight. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Kevin Holland can bring to this fight. But I don't know. He's quite tall, but I think he's quite a lot slimmer and just overall smaller than Jacare. So I don't really see it going well for him. But I think we just kind of have to see where Kevin Holland's at.
I think, as you said, there is certainly weaknesses, and there's places that Jacare can get at. The only thing I would say is this is a Jacare who we've not seen in... Although he was scheduled... I think he was scheduled to fight... He was actually scheduled to fight at 249. So the first fight, but the first card back, he was supposed to fight Uriah Hall.
Okay.
Souza got... Jacare got COVID. I think he was the first victim of it. I do remember that. We haven't seen him in... Well, it will be 11
over
months.
A year.
No, in 13 months. And we've not seen him at middleweight in 20 months, really. So that's the only thing I can say is perhaps this is he is now... How old is he now? 40?
Old.
41. He's 41. Like, so I think if he can settle into this fight, and if there's still elements of Jacare still there, I think there's certainly ways for him to win this fight. But I think it'll be a close one.
Yeah, maybe I'm slightly kind of underrating Kevin Holland. He does have tools that he can use. But I don't know. If Jacare is kind of... Because even Jacare at 41, I still feel like is probably maybe the better athlete. And then technically is, in many aspects, far superior as well. I don't know. Maybe I am biased here because I do quite like Jacare. But yeah, I just see him, if he's anything like, as you said, if he's anything like Jacare of old, he should get this done. And I could see him submitting Holland. So yeah, that's
we'll move up. Morkano Vasiev or Vasiev. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced.
I've heard.
Yeah, Vasiev perhaps. I think that was supposed to be on the Smith-Clark card, and that would have made the Smith-Clark card a bit watchable. But I think a Moicano COVID test, and this has been rescheduled. I don't have too much in the way of knowledge of how this is going to go. What I would say is I think it's going to be a banger.
Yeah. I think it's... Moicano on the feet really does need to get his jab going. But if he can't do that, he's in trouble. And as we saw in the Korean Zombie fight, he is counterable off of the jab. And Fiziev is defensively very sound and fairly good on the I mean, he's fantastic. Like, compared to most MMA fighters, he's just kind of a bit of a step above in terms of his striking. He's very experienced in kickboxing. So I struggle to see Moicano getting his jab and then just overall his game on the feet going. I think that Fiziev will probably tear up his body with body kicks. Moicano's got a fairly lanky, thin frame, and unlike Jacasey, I don't think can take those all night. So to me, Moicano's really does have to get some wrestling going in this, which he is capable of doing. And we haven't really seen Fiziev, not to my knowledge, fight a kind of good wrestler or someone that's really committed to taking him down. So I don't know. I probably favour Fiziev just based on that. I see it playing out mostly on the feet and him probably tearing up Moicano with kicks and then countering his jab and kind of just shutting Moicano down a little bit. But then, Moicano has probably got to get the wrestling going for my money.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting fight regardless.
I think it'll be really fun.
We then move up to our co-main, which I think the people's main event gets sort of banded around quite a lot. But I think for all intents and purposes, could they not have just stuck an interim belt on and given us this is a 5-rounder? Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. This is just going to be carnage. As I was saying before we came on, I was sort of making notes and I was thinking, is this too soon for Ferguson? To that battering at the hands of Gaethje, but in this sort of weird world that we're living in, everything is just sort of my sort of calendar is all over this. It has been 7 months since Ferguson stepped foot in the octagon. So do we think that Ferguson will be just about the same as when he was? Surely something's got to be taken out of him.
That is a big question going into this. Is how is Tony Ferguson? What does he look like? And that's kind of true in a number of ways. One, mostly in kind of durability. He got absolutely battered by Gaethje. And that is going to affect his kind of legendary chin and recovery. You'd have to think it does.
Surely.
So can he take the kind of shots that he has taken previously and recover from them? That remains to be seen. But also, he is 37, 36. Tony Ferguson is quite old, and he does seem to be slowing down. So I think that's another thing that I think we're going to see a slightly slower Tony Ferguson than when he's at his best. And Charles Oliveira has improved significantly recently.
This is crazy. So he's been in the UFC now for 10 years. He made his debut in 2010 when he was 20 years old. He's had 26 fights in the UFC.
That's crazy. Yeah, insane. But given that, he has improved significantly recently. He's far more potent going forward, and his game just kind of slots together a bit more. And he's got kind of a counter-punching game to speak of now on the back foot. But he's still mostly a kind of pressure club and sub guy, beat you up on the feet, snatch your neck when he can. So it'll be. I see. As you said, this fight probably will just be carnage. But Oliveira still isn't that great on the back foot, and he did fight better on the back foot against Tamor. But basically, Tamor is not Tony Ferguson, and Tamor doesn't have the kind of recoverability or chin that Ferguson does and isn't nearly as potent. So whereas Oliveira managed to keep it together on the back foot versus Tamor, I just can't really see him doing that against Ferguson. And Oliveira has kind of broken a little bit in the past, so I see Ferguson just kind of maybe a bit of a dicey first round, as it always is, mostly with Tony Ferguson. But then, as it goes on, him kind of just breaking down Oliveira over time, cutting him up with elbows. But that's at least on the feet. And then when it goes to the ground, it's also a fantastic scrambling match as well.
This is the thing. It's like, I think the Oliveira. I mean, well, Ferguson's ground game is not something to be to be underestimated. But I think Oliveira clearly has the strength there, or at least that'll be where he wants to win the fight. But it's like, will Ferguson will consciously try and keep it on the feet, or if he takes it to the ground, is Ferguson going to be the sort of the crazy guy to sort of try and trade with Ferguson, or trade with Oliveira when it comes to sort of a grappling exchange?
Yeah, Oliveira's weird. Like, he's very potent on the ground, like offensively. However, is probably the highest level kind of guy that is very vulnerable to submissions still. Like, considering how good a grappler he is,
in a lot of risky positions to get the submissions. But that in turn, if you're against a guy like Ferguson that is no slouch on the ground, if he's not careful and he puts him, even a guy like Kevin Lee, he put himself in a few positions in that first round that Kevin Lee reversed. He got on top and got Oliveira in some tricky positions himself. So a guy like Tony Ferguson, if he's clever, can take advantage of that very aggressive ground game that Oliveira has.
Yeah, I think mostly though, probably what I see happening on the ground, like, I think Oliveira does have the advantage there, and if he can get on top, he can work from there, and it can be fairly dicey for Tony. But I mostly see Ferguson being able to scramble and kind of roll with Oliveira. And he might get himself in some dangerous positions. I could see Oliveira taking his back at some point. He's very good at that, obviously. But yeah, Ferguson being able to scramble out of them, get it back to the feet, and continue to kind of bring the pressure down on Oliveira.
Yeah, I think this is just going to be a bang. I think I'd probably favour Tony Ferguson just a smidge. What I would say is it's 3 rounds. Oliveira's had 26 fights. Only 2 of those have gone to a decision. 1 loss and 1 win. And in Tony Ferguson's run, I'm just looking now, he's got a decision against Yves Edward, a decision against Michael Johnson, a decision against Josh Thompson, and 1 against RDA. So there's not a lot of decisions in either of their resumes. I think this one's going to be a finish, but I think I'll favour Ferguson. I think he's got that elite experience that Oliveira has, and I think if you look at Oliveira's run, as much as it is a 6-fight win, and that victory over Kevin Lee should not be, should definitely respect. It's like guys like Jared Gordon and Nick Lentz and David Tamor, Jim Miller, Clay Guida. It's a good run, but it's not, the guys that the Cerrones, the RDAs, the Pettises, the Barbosas, the guys that Ferguson's been sort of trading with for the last sort of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So it is the big question of how does Tony Ferguson look? But if he is kind of near his peak, I could see him breaking Oliveira. Although Oliveira has looked kind of more mentally durable as of late. So it's possible that he can, if he's just really game for this fight, we could get just back and forth war all over the place, scrambling everywhere. But yeah, one thing we know is it is going to be fantastic, and it can't disappoint. I don't see how it does. Having said that, it's going to be a snooze fest now, but
surely not.
I just can't see it.
I can't imagine how. We'll move then to our main event. The same weight division, one of the same fighters who was on the last UFC pay-per-view. In fact, Brandon Moreno, his opponent, was also on that same card. Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno, a 21-day turnaround. I don't know. You know, we sort of talked about it hypothetically after 255.
Yeah.
Because we knew it was because I think by the time we come to talk about it, the fight had already been scheduled for 256.
Yeah.
And I don't think that too much of my early thinking has changed, in that I just think Figueiredo is just too big, too strong, and too good.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion hasn't really had time to change.
It's true.
Yeah, I probably is all I can really say. But I think Moreno's got chances. Like, he didn't really get his boxing going that much against Royval. But if he can get the jab going, I can see him kind of tagging up Figueiredo a little bit if he can play a bit on the outside. And he is a very good grappler. Like, I don't necessarily know about his wrestling, but like his grappling, especially against Royval, looked very good. So I think mixing that up, kind of trying to play like jab Figueiredo from the outside, and then mixing his wrestling, can work for him. And it's, to be fair, I don't know if I've ever really seen Figueiredo be tired, but based on the way he fights, I kind of think he should get tired.
Yeah,
I think
in that I think in the Giuseppe Formiga one that he lost, I think he certainly tied in the third round of that. There is also the double weight cut that he will have had to do. We know that it's a big cut down from him. I mean, I imagine he probably didn't balloon back right up to 160 or whatever the hell he walks around at. But it's still a big weight cut. You look at what Ferguson did, cutting weight for Khabib, you know, in that sort of weird way. It's not the same thing, but you know, this is two giant weight cuts in the space of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think this represents a step up for Moreno. I think, to be honest, Moreno probably should have got the shot instead of Perez in the first place. But I still think Figueiredo will just be too much for Brandon Moreno. I think he's got the striking advantage. I think he's certainly got the power advantage.
Power massively.
I mean, Moreno's wrestling average. I think I'd look at stats like Moreno like wrestles a lot, but he doesn't chase a lot of submissions on the ground. You know, Figueiredo will be chasing something like that. You know, the guillotine or when it comes onto the ground, the rear naked choke if that appears. So Moreno's got to be careful with those takedowns, that he doesn't sort of overexpose himself if that's a way he chooses to go. I do think his boxing is solid. I just wonder whether it'll all just be a bit too much.
Yeah, I think that and Figueiredo is a good counterpuncher as well, which I think can get Moreno into trouble if he's not careful. And yeah, as you said, just I think too big, too powerful, and not enough kind of skill advantages in certain areas for Moreno to be able to really take advantage of his strengths. So yeah, I fairly heavily favour Figueiredo, which feels in a way a bit like a cop-out. Like, I can't see anyone at bantamweight at this point really that I would pick over Figueiredo.
Yeah.
So it just feel like
it would be intriguing to see what happens after this, because I mean, I'm thinking of the guys that are left. You've got maybe, well, I guess the Garbrandt fight, if that's still potentially happening. I don't know what's going on with Garbrandt and his sort of long COVID. There's maybe Askar Askarov, but I honestly think Figueiredo is probably looking for no more than 1 or 2 more defenses before he would want to move up to bantamweight. I mean, he can't be doing that cut forever.
Yeah. It could even be after this fight, to be honest. But yeah, maybe Askar Askarov is probably the only person that kind of springs to mind. Maybe Pantoja, if you can get a win. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But I fairly like Figueiredo is kind of like a bit of a weird fighter to me. But he is certainly very effective. He's a bit like kind of Joel Romero in a sense, very explosive and athletic, but kind of low output, but because
Yeah.
he's a flyweight, he's still fairly high output. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It should be a good fight. Another thing to mention is Brandon Moreno is very tough. I don't think he's ever been finished, and I think he's very seldom knocked down or anything, if ever. So it could be. I mean, having said that, he's never faced a hitter like Figueiredo, but it could be interesting. But yeah, fairly heavily favour Figueiredo.
Yeah, well, that's essentially the card. I mean, you've got what else have you got on there? I mean, there's Cub Swanson, Daniel Pineda. I think Pineda got a victory over smaller Herbert Burns, if I remember. Mackenzie Dern versus Werner Jandiroba. They're both like Muay Thai on a BJJ black belt, so that could be a fun exchange. Yeah, I think unless you have anything, we'll probably leave it there in terms of our preview for 256.
No, that's everything, I think. I've just seen Chase Hooper's back actually. So let's see if he looks like.
Is it? Well, that'll be interesting. Yeah, he obviously. I hope he's learned some skills on the feet, because he was getting outclassed by Alex Caceres, which is never a good look.
No.
Yeah, well, he's opening up the card, so we can pay attention to him. Yeah, we'll largely be back next week to review that. We've got the last card of the year. I think. I mean, we've still not seen anything else, which has obviously lost its main event in Edwards versus Chimaev, but still got Thompson Neal, Aldo Vera, Maurice Font, Pettis Morono. I've just seen added on there. So yeah, there's plenty to be talking about there.
Very good card.
And yeah, that'll probably be our last. Well, certainly our last one before Christmas, but it could be our last one for a bit, because we've not got one until Jan 2016. So
20
maybe
16th,
2016.
Yeah,
2021.
Time travel. We've gone. Cool.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But yeah, so Jan 2016, 2021. I don't know what we'll do. Maybe we could do sort of a
year end
of year awards. Maybe perhaps in the new year, or just before the new year. But we'll sort something out.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
See you everyone.